Next in line, we have Andrea Esther Hussein, an Internet Hall of Fame awardee, and currently the chair of the United Nations Internet Governance Forum Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group. So over to you, Andrea. Your attendees today would be around 50 fellows, quite a few from India and quite a few from various other parts of the world. Over to you, Andrea.
Thank you very much, and I hope you can hear me and that you can see my screen. It's an honor to be invited. I really appreciate this. It's wonderful to be with you all. So let me go straight ahead to this slide. Before we talk about internet governance, just let's pause for a few seconds and think, what is the internet? So you'll see two diagrams there in front of you. On the one side, there's this interconnected network of networks that and you will learn more during inSIG about how these networks are interconnected through common protocols that allows for interoperability. Or is it what we see on the other side, which is people from different places in different parts of the world? So I can't see what's in the chat right now, but just type, or if anyone wants to speak up, what do you think the internet is? I'm going to look at the chat and see what you are typing in the chat. Okay. Is the internet people or is the internet networks? Cat videos, says someone. Connection. What else? Just a few more off-the-cuff responses. There's no wrong or right answers. Connecting people and sharing information, network of networks, memes, experience. Exactly. So I think, you know, if I read your answers, you're actually saying it's both. Both those images represent for us what the internet is. It is a network of network. It has this technical, and you'll learn about the layers of the network later in inSIG, but it's about people. And primarily, I think it's about people. And this is the challenge of internet governance, that in internet governance processes, we have to understand both the technical workings of the internet, but we also have to consider the policies and regulations, the experiences, the content created by people. So to tell you about the Internet Governance Forum, as I was introduced as the chair of the current until the end of this year of the Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group, the Internet Governance Forum was an outcome of the World Summit on the Information Society, which was a United Nations process. And I think people forget that actually the Global South was really a main driver in that whole process. So the World Summit on the Information Society was very much a summit about how the world, particularly developing countries, can benefit from the power of information and communication technologies. But as usual, governments can't always agree on things when they talk amongst one another. And the IGF was actually an outcome of that lack of consensus, because governments couldn't decide how to deal with internet governance, but they could agree that a global forum for policy dialogue would be valuable. So since then, in a very bottom-up way, the IGF has evolved. It's no longer just an annual conference. It's actually a whole ecosystem, from national IGFs to regional IGFs. And in fact, I think schools like inSIG are also part of that. This year, we are celebrating the 15th anniversary of the IGF. And on November 30, it will be 15 years since the first IGF in Athens in 2006. So one thing I want you to just reflect on is, because it's connected to the School of Internet Governance and to the IGF, and that is the definition of Internet governance. This definition is in the Tunis Agenda, which is the document that gives, in the United Nations context, the mandate to the IGF. And it emerged from that same World Summit on the Information Society I mentioned. And this is actually still the working definition used by many governments and by many multi-stakeholder processes. And it's kind of important, I think. I'll just read it. Internet governance is the development and application by governments, private sector, and civil society in their respective roles of shared principles, norms, rules, decision-making procedures, and programs that shape the evolution and use of the internet. And I think this touches on what Vint was saying about use of the internet. And there are good uses, there are not so good uses. And it just changes all the time. And the internet is evolving. The internet is not a parallel dimension. It's part of human society and economy. It reflects the same inequalities that we see in the offline world. The same crimes that we see in the offline world find themselves expressed and translated into the online world. So this gives internet governance actually a very broad scope. That doesn't mean that you, as people that are learning and want to be involved, that you need to be involved in all aspects of internet governance. You can select a technical sphere, or work on content moderation, or work on community networks, or looking at open standards. But what is important, that even if you focus on one aspect of internet governance, that you don't lose sight of this bigger picture. So now to tell you a bit about this, yes, IJF, and you have my fellow MAG member here, Amrita Chaudhary. She's a MAG member, a very hard working MAG member. And I hope that in the course of inSIG, she'll share more about the IJF with you. The way the IJF works is that we build the program, the content, on the basis of community consultation. So at the beginning of every cycle, we ask people over the world, and everyone can contribute. You can all contribute. We ask them to say what they think is important in terms of internet policy and regulation. And based on that, the MAG, the Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group, then crafts a program document with issues and themes and policy questions. So this year, it was very interesting to see what people were concerned about. Economic and social inclusion and human rights really were by far, one of the most pressing issues. People feel the internet is very unequal, that opportunity is not equal. And this is not just about access, it's also about how you can use the internet, or whether you can actually benefit from the internet once you have access. And then secondly, universal access and meaningful connectivity. That remains for many people a challenge. And that spans access to infrastructure, access to devices, access to language, content, local content, to knowledge that's relevant and meaningful to people. So it's not just about access to the infrastructure, but it's also about having the skills and being empowered to make use of it, and then to find relevant content when you get there. But actually, quite importantly, are the emerging and cross-cutting issues that the community also put forward. And I think some of these will become main issues in the future. Emerging regulation, it's a major issue at the moment. You've all probably seen the debates. And in fact, in India, you have your own versions of challenges and debates and dialogues on regulation of the internet, regulation of internet companies, content regulation, competition regulation. How do we ensure that the internet, which is a global platform, is actually has equal barriers or equal entry opportunities for businesses all over the world? Content and data, how do we regulate hate speech, for example? How do we deal with, as Vint was saying, disinformation and misinformation? Environmental sustainability, another issue. It's increasingly climate change. We've just been through COP26. Digital and digitalization aspects of climate change is increasingly important. In fact, data centers, the whole internet industry or internet sector has become a greater contributor to global warming than the airline industry. Then inclusive internet governance ecosystems and digital cooperation. This is an ongoing debate. How do we make decisions? How do we make them collaboratively? How do we make sure that global South voices and global North voices, that voices of marginalized communities, of small island and developing states, for example, how do we make sure they are heard in global internet governance? And at a national level, how do you make sure that excluded voices, people that are actually not able to really influence internet decision making, but that are affected by it, how do we make sure that they can be part of internet governance? And then trust, security, and stability. It undercuts everything that really we do on the internet. Do we trust the network? Do we trust that our information can be shared with confidence, that our rights to privacy are protected, that our financial transactions are secure? And do we trust that our governments are able to protect government infrastructure and databases from ransomware attacks, for example, or even cyber attacks between states, but also by non-state actors? So, more about this year's process, just those are the themes. And on those themes that I just dwelled on, there will be some outputs. The IGF is often criticized for not producing outputs, and it is primarily a forum for dialogue between different stakeholders and people from different parts of the world, and that is its strength. But we do capture discussion, we capture key messages on those policy questions and issue areas I talked about, and these will be available and translated. And the idea is that they can then be taken to the national level or to the regional level or to other institutions like ICANN or the International Telecommunications Union for further discussion. And there was a preparatory phase. In fact, it's still on. You can participate in that. And this year's IGF will be fully hybrid. So it will be face-to-face in Poland, hosted by the government of Poland, but you can also participate online. It has a high-level track with speakers from government and businesses and from the technical community. It has a parliamentary track where parliamentarians are talking about internet governance from the perspective of national legislatures. There's a youth IGF, and then the intersessional work. The IGF is not just an event. There are these communities and groups of people that work on specific issues during the year. Best practice forums, dynamic coalitions, and policy networks. Just to give you a bit of a sense of what this broader ecosystem looks like, national and regional and youth IGFs, there are actually, I think now more than 140 national and regional IGFs. I'm not sure how many of you would have participated in the Asia Pacific Regional IGF, for example. There are also dynamic coalitions. These are communities of practice and they're open to anyone. And they work on specific topics such as community networks, for example, or on human rights and principles. So they really are there for you to look at. They're on the IGF website. And if you want to get involved, you can. Best practice forums, these are actually more focused groups where they tackle a particular policy challenge and they try and gather good practices on that. There are also MAG working groups that you can participate in. And Amrita is the co-chair of the MAG working group on IGF strategy and strengthening. This is just to give you a bit of a snapshot of the different kind of dynamic coalitions. So public access in libraries, for example, Internet of Things, it gives you a sense of the scope of these communities of practice that use the IGF as a platform for their collaboration. I've mentioned that this is hybrid. The Katowice Forum this year, it will be live streamed as well on the IGF's YouTube channel. There are remote hubs. In fact, there's one in India, and I'll just come to it now. There are more than 200 different sessions this year. It's a bit overwhelming when you look at the schedule, but if you spend a little bit of time on the schedule and you register and you look at the sessions that seem interesting to you, you can build your own little map to how and what to participate in this year's IGF. The India Hub is being hosted by ISOC Hyderabad, which is the city that hosted the IGF in 2008. And I was very happy to be there myself. So you can also physically, if you are near Hyderabad or in Hyderabad, go and join a group of people who are together following the IGF virtually. So that's really all from me. I just wanted to also put this question to you, and I know that you care about internet governance, otherwise you wouldn't be part of inSIG. But I think it's always worth reflecting why it is important that we become involved in internet governance at a national level, at a regional level, at a global level, and at a local level. And at a local level, it can be something such as you know people in a village where there's no access, and you know that access will make a difference in their lives. And you want to be part of the policy discussion and the policy and regulatory process that enables that. For example, in Kenya, in Africa, just in the last month, the Kenyan telecommunications regulator has decided they will issue licenses to community networks. These are small, locally owned internet service providers. And that is a result of people like yourselves getting involved in internet governance in Kenya. Globally, I think it's absolutely important that we make sure that internet governance is global, that it is influenced by people from all classes, all races, religions, all parts of the world, that the internet, it might have emerged in North America in many respects and in Europe. But in fact, the internet is all of us. It's the world, and the world is much more diverse than those so-called origins of the internet. And therefore, it's important that we participate in its governance to make sure that it's multilingual and that it's influenced by people from all parts of the world, that it's not just Facebook and Amazon and Apple and Microsoft and Google, that it is really something that is more global and creates opportunities everywhere. So I'm sure you'll discuss this much more, and I'm sorry there isn't more time for us to have Q&A, but it's always a pleasure for me to be with you, and I wish you all a very dynamic time. Keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, think critically, talk to one another, talk to the fantastic input people that the inSIG team have pulled together for you this year. And I hope to see you at the IGF. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That was an important message that you just put across. Participation is key, and that exactly is what the entire inSIG is all about.